Hello, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back here to RaceSpot TV, and welcome back to the Radical Esports Cup. This is round number 4 of the season, coming to you tonight from Suzuka. My name is Ron Mullins. Alongside me in the commentary booth is Jeremy Scott. Ramiro Augustine Cisneros is our producer for tonight's broadcast. As we brace ourselves to kick off the second quarter of this season, we head to an absolute gem of a racetrack. Suzuka Circuit was first opened back in 1962, and in the 63 years since, it has been the site of both national and international racing events. Jeremy, welcome into the world of Radical SR10s here on iRacing. I hope you'll have a good time here and have some fun at this absolutely awesome racetrack.
Ron, I'm excited because, as I've mentioned earlier, I've called Radicals in real life, so I know what these cars are like. I know how nimble, how exciting they could be. The fact that we're here at Suzuka even makes it even better because it's such a high prestige track where you really have to get it right the first time.
Yeah, this sort of racetrack is very unforgiving for these drivers, and in these SR10s that tend a bit more towards understeer, it's a very tricky ride. But we got a fantastic schedule to look forward to throughout the rest of this official season. A reminder to anyone tuning into this broadcast either on RaceSpot TV or the iRacing Esports Network, this is the official Radical series here on the iRacing platform, and if you want to be a part of these broadcasts, hey, you can tune in either here on the broadcast or just join some of the races. It's the top split that we're covering here, Friday, 2100 GMT. And here's how it looks in terms of the point standings here from the official series. Harvard Gullickson is your current championship leader, 734 points on the board. Rafa Blanco finds himself in P2. Andreas Friedrich, Kettle Larson, George Gonzaga. Round at your top 5, the likes of Heinz Braun, Sally Ryan, and Christopher Yanakis, Johnny Cajolas, and Luke Crowley rounding at your top 10. Lots of drivers that you see up and down are veterans of this series. They've been around the block before, and you can tell based off the fact they've been very quick throughout this season. Interestingly enough, though, the 2 winners we've had thus far this season for these 2100 GMT Friday broadcasted races, not in the top 10 in the points, those being the likes of Andre Castro and Christoph Flip. We may be seeing them a little bit later on tonight, though, once we load in to the racing action, the session currently going on at the present moment. And really looking forward to this race here at Suzuka. As much as it is a real tricky racetrack to try and nail down in these SR10s, it can also be super rewarding when you get it right.
It really is. Right now, 65 degrees air temp, Fahrenheit 19 degrees Celsius, 17 degrees Celsius track temp, 63 degrees Fahrenheit. So you're not seeing too much of a difference here, and that's what's going to make it interesting, especially since you've got to get those tires warmed up, get that fast lap in, because the key to really any Radical Cup race, especially here in the E-Cup, you want to be up near the front. We saw what happened last weekend, and don't want to repeat that, but nonetheless, you still got to make sure that you're close to the front to really capitalize early on in these races.
Especially heading off through some of the first corners around this racetrack, if you find you're to be in for a world of trouble. So this qualifying session going to have a lot of importance for these racers. Set the best time that you possibly can, and then you can go from there. This qualifying session currently going on, a single car qualifying session. These drivers won't have to worry about each other on the racetrack. And you can see the mad weaving going on for some of these drivers, just trying to get some temperature built up into their tires. I've hit this dead horse with a stick a lot throughout this season. I will continue to raise it. The tire temperature is such a fickle thing in these race cars. If you're heading down into turn number 1 and 2 around here on cold tires, which you very much will be considering it is a standing start in this series, you're going to be feeling the burn. Rather ironic with cold tires, but you will be feeling the burn, and you're also maybe going to be feeling what it's like to run through the gravel trap around this racetrack. An unforgiving car with an unforgiving track, little patches of asphalt runoff here and there. And some
last weekend in FP2 in Formula 1 with Jack Doonan finding the gravel trap pretty hard. It's a small gravel trap, so yeah, you're going to come up on that tire wall real quick. Number 3. Love that. Insert name here on the side pod. Nonetheless, that's one way to advertise a good sponsor there. But yeah, these gravel traps, they come at you quick here at Suzuka. And with this being a standing start, yeah, you definitely want to get those tires, because that first turn, while it looks quick, it's pretty deceiving.
Yeah, it can be very deceiving for these drivers, either in real life or in the sim. I always feel like I have trouble heading off into turn number 2, albeit very good reason why I'm behind a microphone instead of behind the wheel. I'm not the best sim racer in the world. These drivers, on the other hand, very talented drivers. And one thing to raise about Andreas Friedrich, who we're seeing cross that start-finish line a couple of moments ago to slip his way up into second. Still very early stages into this qualifying session, mind you. That team, the insert name iRacing team, they are are a team that we see a lot of here in the Radical world, both in the official series that's broadcasted here on RaceSpot TV, along with the European Championship that you can catch occasionally on Sundays here on RaceSpot TV. Actually got the latest round of that championship coming up this very weekend at this exact same racetrack channel. Head on over to RaceSpot TV and hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on the action here from these SR10s. As a 10-season veteran here from these official races, dating all the way back to when this series was called the Radical Racing Challenge, these cars, I don't know what it is, whether there's something in the fuel tanks of them or whether there's something in the cereal for these drivers. They just put on brilliant. Friedrich Nagel and Lucas Rees, practically nothing between some of these racers.
Yeah, no, it's very tight, and that's not a surprise to see tight qualifying, especially in the SR10s. You see that in the real-life series as well, with some of the names that are up near the front, like, you know, Indy Al Miller, and also the, oh man, I just drew blank, but some of the other drivers that run in the, that's a .000. That's how close qualifying is here.
Yeah,
or that opening spot is. Looks like that the drivers decided that they've done their qualifying. So, Ron, it's getting to be that time. Let's take a look at the grid.
Yeah, let's take a look at the starting grid for this race we have coming up. It's going to be Tom Katzadona starting from the pole, the Aussie in the number 2 car starting in P1. Starting in P2 is going to be Lucas Rees from Central Eastern Europe. That driver, seeing a lot of him in the past here in this series, so he is a veteran as well. Rudolf Nagel will start in 3rd next to Sebastian Lipp, the brother of Christoph Lipp, who won earlier on in this season at Road America. Starting in P5 is going to be another veteran of this series and yet another insert name iRacing team car. That is the number 3 of Andreas Friedrich, starting in 5th next to Harvard Gullickson in P6. Starting in 7th is going to be Rafa Blanco, and P8 will be the multi-time champion from this official series in the form of James Barry. Lasse Sorensen in the IGL Coatings car will start this race in 9th. Next to Heinz Braun, the German, rounding out our top 10. We have Myron Ianni starting right behind them, and you can see the rest of the drivers here. Andre Castro, Dennis Kyriakopoulos, George Gonzaga, and Kim Andre Bjorklund rounding out your top 16. And your 16 car field set to grab the green in a couple of moments time. 13 laps lie ahead for these racers in this official series. A standing start as well, and you can see them lining up on this starting grid that run down into turn number 1. It's long enough whereby you can tow into the slipstream of the driver right in front of you, and maybe even think about going for a move heading off into turn number 1. Both these cold, greasy tires on these SR10, and just a race car that takes a couple laps really to get the juices flowing. Maybe a little bit sketchy going for a move like that so very early on into this race, but waiting for some more drivers to line up on the starting grid before we can get this 4th race of this official season set to begin. Suzuka, it's hosted Radical Esports Cup races in the past, and those races have been some barn burners. I have a pretty good feeling about this race coming up here this evening. Waiting for some more cars to line up on that starting grid. As you can see, standing start, and we are already away. The green flag is out, and the drivers are on their way. That's a fantastic start for Lucas Rees, heading down into turn number 1. Got to take the lead. A terrible start from the number 2. He's going to find himself in a big hornet's nest. Is a big crash heading off through 1 and 2, multiple cars getting a piece of that action. That was a bad incident for your pole sitter. That is a terrible start for Katstonis.
It really is. Drops him back off to 16th so far. Lucas Rees, your leader, with Nagel, Lipp, and Gullickson second, third, and 4th. Rees able to get away from the rest of the field so far, but what a putrid start for Katsadonis. Goes from hero to 0 in just about 1 corner.
Yeah, that was a terrible start for Katstonis, and let's see if he will be on the up and up. Currently found himself in 17th at the present moment, so well farther back. It was some 3-wide action going desperately wrong. I think Dennis Kyriakopoulos has had some sort of moment. He's dropped down to P16. That was to the insert name iRacing team cars that were involved in that 3-wide action going wrong, heading off into turn number 1. I literally said right before we grabbed the green that side-by-side racing heading off through some of the first corners around this racetrack in these cars usually going to be a recipe for disaster, and I think my point got proven rather early on.
Still working their way through the spoon curve so far. Nagel's opened up a 7/10 of a second lead over. Rise is open a 7/10 of a second lead, but you are starting to see these drivers kind of bob and weave heading into 130R. High commitment corner as Nagel, Lip, and Gullickson still battling each other for that second spot.
It's still going to be some close quarters racing between now and the checkered flag, but at the end of this first lap, it's Lucas Reese in front of Rudolf Nagel. Sebastian Lipp rounding at your podium as it stands at the present moment, but getting a nice little bump drift down that start-finish straightaway. It's Harvard Gullickson and Rafa Blanca, the number 15 car. You can see him giving a slight little nudge and a wink, heading down that start-finish straightaway off into 1 and 2 right now. They're still running Linus Stern in 4th and 5th, but Blanco may try and get a move done heading off into the start of the S's. Not close enough. Currently, the meat of a sandwich of 2 IGL Coatings cars, Gullickson and Lasse Sorensen. Right in between them is Rafa Blanca. That's not an ideal situation if you're the driver of the number 15 car.
Andre Castro's made his way up to 9th. The Team USA scholarship recipient had not a good qualifying effort, but yeah, up in the top 10 already as we are watching Sebastian Lipp trying to get up 1 spot on that podium, but he also is trying to hold off Gullickson and Blanco. 9 and under the bridge right now. Tight racing through the middle of the pack as the field working lap 2. Again, it's a 13-lap event. And look who's gone to the inside, Castro. And through the hairpin, picks up yet another spot.
Yeah, Castro battling with Heinz Braun. Those 2 drivers, some of the most aggressive here in the Radical Esports Cup. They were quick racers, though, don't get me wrong. However, having those 2 go side by side battling out here on the racetrack is essentially the answer to the age-old question, what happens when unstoppable force meets an immovable object? They're very quick drivers, don't get me wrong, but they can get the urge to break their elbows out a little bit. Heinz Braun currently locked steady in a very close battle, was involved in a battle with Myron Ianni. He's now dropped behind Kim Andre and Bjorklund, so that's not working good for Ianni at all. Losing out on another spot to one of the other inert cars, that is George Gonzaga, and the number 17 car gets that move done, and now look at that, the dive from Christopher Yanakis, heading down into the Casio triangle, still side by side and spinning, coming out of the final corner. That is Myron Ianni in the 10 car, ending up in the gravel, and things going from bad to worse to even crappier.
Yeah, Ianni was lucky that he spun there because that was setting up for a corner earlier. Give it another battle for position as Sorensen trying to hold off Barry. Barry the inside, there's a touch and right into the gravel trap. So Barry's going to lose 1, 2, maybe 3 positions here as the field, yeah, they're all straggled around and more cars going off in turn 1. So a lot of argy-bargy, as our good friends would say. That's Larson and Kriakopoulos also back there as well. I'm not sure if those 2 were involved, but both going off. Here's the battle for 4th. Gullickson and Blanco tight through the Degner curves.
Yeah, and that right there was Kettle Larson and Dennis Kyriakopoulos coming to blows, heading off through that first corner. We saw that moment involving, I believe it was Lasse Sorensen and James Barry. That was not an ideal moment for either of those racers. 2 very experienced drivers here in the Esports Cup, but heading off side by side through 1 and 2 in situations like that, you're kind of asking for something like that to happen, if I'm being completely honest, and maybe to load up a replay of all that drama going on. It was a bad series of events for the insert name iRacing team cars, as we saw one of them of Ianni have a moment, another one of Kyriakopoulos have a moment, hang off through 1 and 2, and then right as that was going on, James Barry got into a little bit of a tussle with the IGL Coatings cars. Those drivers didn't have a good run of things either, considering that Lasse Sorensen and Kettle Larson both got involved in similar incidents through pretty much the exact same section of the racetrack, probably about 15 seconds apart. Thankfully, though, here in the sim, these drivers won't have to worry about any red flags for grass fires, as we saw them dipping some wheels off into the dirt heading down to 130R.
Yeah, let's take a look at this replay here. That was the second issue. Oh, just a 3 wide into 1. You cannot do that. So yeah, the insert name here team just, you know, if they didn't have any bad luck, they would have no luck at all as this battle for second heats up between Nagel and Lip down through 1. It's about the closest we've seen Lip, and he's been about the highest insert name here team driver, and of course Rise trying to get away from this battle for second place as those 2 for second and third, they want to get to that lead. Of course, Gullickson and Blanco might be involved in this battle here, Ron, because the 2 for second place, they're really they're line of stars, you like to say.
Yeah, it's getting dicey, though, all throughout this field. Nagel and Lip, those two drivers battling would be music to the ears for Lucas Reese. He finds himself holding onto the race lead with about a second gap between himself and Rudolf Nagel. And who knows, if we see those drivers right behind him start to battle and he can minimize those off-track moments coming out of Dekna 2 under the bridge, he may be able to run away with this race win. Currently 4 laps on the board in this 13-lap long race. As much as it may seem like very little, thinking about the drama we've had ever since the drop of the green flag and realize that we haven't even hit the halfway mark of this race just yet. These races, it's odd. It feels like they go by in the blink of an eye, and it also feels like it feels like it takes forever to get through some of these races. And I'm not speaking about my perspective as a commentator. I'm speaking about a couple of seasons ago where I ran in some of these official races. I've commentated on them and I've driven them. It was one at Sebring, so not exactly this track, but another challenging track here for these SR10s. I remember running that official race and having just a whirlwind of emotions through it. You go through the stages in a race like this, and we're not talking about the ones you see in a NASCAR event.
Yeah, and that's how it is too in real life. You know, they're 35 to 45 minutes. So someone, whoa, looks like Gullickson. I should say Lip losing a little bit of pace right now as he's well off the pace going through the Casio Triangle. He's losing 3, 4, 5 spots as Gullickson, Blanco, they've improved, but they're going side by side through one. Can they make it? Yes. Look at Gullickson just holding on the outside. That car is just so glued, and he's utilizing all of the downforce with these cars. You take a look at, you know, up close, there's enough downforce where you can go to the outside and hang tight to try and defend your position, but now we got a 3-way battle for third as Nagel tries to keep up, catch up to Rise. He's under a second right now.
Yeah, that gap remaining about the same as it was this time 1 lap ago, albeit, hey, I mean, as long as he's not losing time, that's what matters at the end of the day. And if Lucas Reese is maybe burning up some of the stuff in that number 6 car, it may fall into the lap of Rudolf Nagel. Only time will tell how it's going to shake out between now and the checkered flag. Gullickson losing out on P3 to Rafa Blanco, another veteran of this series. He's also feeling a lot of pressure from Christoph Flip right behind. So let's take a look at a moment involving Lasse Sorensen. That's heading off through the S's and does avoid the wall. Well done. I was fully expecting him to whack that barrier and put some pretty bad damage on that race car. Will note one driver who's had just about the worst race you could have is Katsudonis, the driver of the number 2 car who started this race from the pole position. Currently down in pit lane. Not sure if there's some sort of extracurricular off-track excursion that driver has faced, but they found themselves in P17 over a minute spent down pit lane. Things going from bad to worse, and even worser still. I know worser isn't a word, isn't a word I should say, but there's only so many words you can use to describe how bad their race is going.
I know that somebody lost a front fairing a couple of laps ago that was gone. Might have been Katsudonis, might have been Sorensen, as Sorensen is also pit side to make repairs, but everybody trying to chase our leader, Lucas Rise, who took it after a first lap mayhem. Also have a battle for 7th place between James Berry, who has it, Heinz Braun, who wants it, and look at Kim-Andre Bjorklund. Bjorklund was near the back of the pack as well, I believe, shotgun out of the field, making their way up into the top 10 as well. So you got a battle for 3rd, battle for 7th, and a battle for 9th going on. So a lot of great battles here in play with just 6 laps into the race.
So a lot of time left to go between now and the checkered flag, with the drivers cutting their way through the field like a hot knife through butter. You always love to see it. In these SR10 races, if you can keep your car clean and you can master this car around a certain racetrack, whichever one we're visiting that present week, you can find yourself getting a real good result, even if you don't have the best qualifying session in the world. As much as track position may be a pretty strong advantage, which is advantage that Lucas Reese is still holding on to at the moment. Now 1.3 seconds a gap to himself and Rudolf Nagel. You can get some moves done around a racetrack like this. You got some long flat-out blasts, which in these draft-heavy radical SR10s, I always like to say that the SR10 probably in the top 3 most drafty road course-only cars here in this sim. Top 3 only with the likes of the Spec Racer Ford and the Formula V. They are draft monsters. So around a track like this, where as much as you do have the turns that affect you dirty air-wise, you also got some long flat-out blasts that can keep this field vacuum vacuum sealed together, as we may see Harvard Gullickson try and go for a move on Rafa Blanco in the not too far off future. Not going to go for it, heading off into 130R. I think that may be the smart call, but with 4 cars pretty much vacuum sealed together like a bunch of chicken breasts you could buy at a grocery store, I have a feeling we may see some action into 1.
Well, Gullickson tried to make a look also going through the Casio triangle. Thought better of it. Let's see what he does through turn 1. And before this happens, you got to understand too, these cars originally, so we got a battle for the 6th place. Andre Castro makes his way into the top 5 as Lip tried to look to the inside, and Lip gets that position back through turn number 1. But back to my point here, these cars are basically training grounds for prototype racers, so it makes sense that, you know, you got the SR3, then you get more downforce in the SR8, then you get more downforce in the SR10, which you see some of these drivers move up into like an LMP3 or an LMP2, depending on, you know, what their goals are, or they just stay here in Radical Cup because it is such a good training ground in real life, and we're seeing that the real life physics being moved into the iRacing physics make this such a great racer for anyone and anywhere on track as you're learning the aerodynamics. Still watching this battle for 3rd, which has quickly become a 4-5 car battle between Blanco, Gullickson, Lip, Castro, and Barry, all the way through the hairpin. They're close up. Oh, look at Castro trying to do a little nudge there on Sebastian Lip for that 5th spot. So he's letting Lip know that, yeah, he's still there, but he's not going to make it easy on him near the end of the race.
And, you know, on the points that you raised a couple of moments ago, Jeremy, talking about the way this car is on iRacing, and it's usually a stepping ground into the LMP3s, there's a little bit I can fill in talking about all of that. I've got the crayons and the coloring book. I may as well fill out the sheets. These cars drive very similar to the LMP3s here on the iRacing platform. I've driven both rather extensively, and I can assure you that they do have a rather similar feel. And just based off some of the broadcasts I've done, I've seen a lot of the drivers that you see as standout stars here in these SR10s do rather good in LMP3 machinery here on the iRacing platform as well. There's a driver whose name is escaping me. It was a French driver who ran in these Radical Official Series some seasons ago, who was very fast in these SR10s and showed that same speed, if not even more of it, in LMP3s here in the sim. So you can see a little bit of that conversion, but on the subject of a lot of these drivers maybe deciding to just stay in the Radical SR10s, there's a certain amount of skill and a certain skill set you have to run very good in these races. And looking through the drivers we see up and down this grid, granted, this is a first season that this official series has been broadcasted here on RaceSpot TV and also shown on the iRacing Esports network. I've been with these Friday official races for about 10 seasons. I can assure you the likes of Lucas Rees, Rafa Blanco, Harvard Gullickson, Sebastian Lip, Andre Castro, James Barry, Heinz Braun, Kim Trey Bjorklund, George Gonzaga, Christopher Yanakis, pretty much all of the field, with only a couple of exceptions, are drivers who have been around the block here in these SR10s and have been around for years coming up to this point. And I will raise one more point about all this, talking about these cars and pulling in a little bit of terminology from my old colleague here on these Friday 2100 GMT races, Mr. J.R. Gregory, Mr. Radical himself, as I like to call him. He would always say at the start of these broadcasts, every single week with a different broadcaster that I will not mention by name, that the mastery of these SR10s will make you better in just about everything. It is a good training ground here on the iRacing platform. There's really nothing that drives like it, but it is a good car to hone your skills. It's like a sharpening block for a kitchen knife.
It really is, and you see in real life, too, the alumni in Radicals around the world where they've got Lip with a lock heading through the Casio triangle, so this is going to be interesting going into turn 1. We're also seeing Braun and Barry go toe-to-toe for that 7th spot. We saw them at the bottom. Barry with I believe it was Lip that dropped a wheel here, and of course we're seeing that Braun and Barry going to the inside there as we take a look at the replay, and that was actually Sebastian Lip with a little bit of a just a toe dip there in the Degner curve. No harm, no foul. He's able to get back underway, didn't lose too much. But you take a look at the alumni and where they're racing from Radical all the way into professional racing. So Radicals, whether they're here in iRacing or they're in real life, a great training ground, and that's the way it's meant to be. That's why they're gaining so much popularity in the 20 or so years around the world. We're watching the battle for 30 on the top, on the bottom. You've got the battle for 7th. Braun and Barry going, there's a little bit bigger gap between them and the battle for 3rd, but this battle for 3rd Ron, I've got to say, this has just been nothing short of spectacular.
This has been a brilliant race up to this point. And just another one from this official series. Looking through the race of the Nürburgring to kick it all off, saw some pretty heart-pumping racing action, and your eventual winner of Andre Castro putting a move done to take the race lead around the outside, heading through the fast chicane right towards the end of that Grand Prix version of the course. If anyone's seen a quicker layout of that chicane, you know that that's tricky enough single file, let alone side by side. The Road America race 2 weeks ago saw a heart-pumping last-second overtake hang down to Canada corner at the end, and the race at CTMP 1 week ago saw a pretty thrilling finish as well. We're in for a good one yet again. As much as Lucas Rees may be pulling away with it, the hornet's nest of cars battling for P2, led by Rudolf Nagel and stretching all the way down to Andre Castro in 6th. It is a hornet's nest if ever you've seen one.
Well, he saw Sebastian Lipp try and improve a position. He popped to the inside on Gullickson going into 130R. Obviously not very well advised for that fast left-handed corner. We're still watching this battle for second place between Nagel, Blanco, Gullickson, Lipp, and Castro. Castro goes to the inside of Lipp, but Lipp shuts the door. Lipp goes off course. Oh, not sure if there was side-by-side contact. Lipp into the tire barriers. In turn 1, Castro moves into the top 5. Lipp's falling down 2-3 spots, but not a good start, and I think that's going to be race over for Sebastian Lipp as he is towed into the pits.
That is going to be a kick in the shins if ever you see it for the driver of the number 13 car. He's towed back to pit lane, finds himself in P15 at the present moment, joining 2 retirements potentially in the form of Katsadonis, who started this race from the pole, and things just went, they didn't even fall off a cliff. They fell into the center of a black hole. You can see contact heading into the corner. That must have broken the rear right suspension on that number 13 car. Either way, with lucky number 13 on that race car, falling anvil coming down to strike him on top of his head.
And Lipp with a little bit extra defense going into turn 1. He really wasn't going to give Castro that move, but Castro holding his ground, so hopefully nothing was damaged on the 1 car as we're walking on board with Andre Castro. Yeah, just a couple of moves in defense, and something had to break there from those contacts with Castro, which is weird because the SR10 is built like a tank if you have raced those, but nonetheless, just one strange contact, and that could end your race. Field working their way heading into 130R. Nagel, Blanco, Gullickson, Castro. 4-car train for second place as, oh, that was a little bit of an off by Gullickson, using a little bit of extra track there in 130R, but that gives him a good exit.
And upon further review, looking at that moment that we saw involving Christoph Lipp, I'm not really sure what exactly went wrong there. I think there's a little bit of net code, at least from my perspective. It didn't break any of the suspension, but just got him a little bit wiggled up in the worst way you could imagine. These SR10s, as much as they have a lot of downforce and a lot of grip to give, if you can finagle your way around this track in a certain way, they are also incredibly sensitive. You have a little bit of tweak to the front end of that car, maybe hit a curb, heading through one of these fast S's, you're going to find yourself spearing your way off the circuit. That front splitter and keeping it as close to the ground as you can possibly can, super vital to having the downforce at the front end to haul the mail off through some of these corners, and just a little bit of a nudge heading down to one of the fastest corners of these racetracks, going to get him all sorts of loose and launch his way into the barrier. I believe Sebastian Lipp has called it. He has not rejoined this race, and with only 2 laps to go, really doesn't have a hope and a prayer of making his way back into this battle. It's still intense, though, led by Rudolf Nagel, as side-by-side racing with Andre Castro and Gullickson. Gullickson on that inside line. Castro held on his own on the outside, heading off through the hairpin of turn number 11, and now heading down into 12. This side-by-side fight going to continue down into Spoon, unless it's going to result in Castro clearing him before they even think about going on the brakes down into Spoon. I think that was a mix of Castro having a run and Gullickson deciding that side-by-side off into the Spoon section. That was not going to work as Castro got a little bit sideways in corner exits.
Well, that hairpin has a little bit of a banking, so Castro using that to his advantage. Now he has his sights set on Rafa Blanco for third, but look at this, Gullickson to the inside. 130R bump by Castro. Little bit of an off there, by the American driver. Gullickson took that spot back quite nicely. That has given second and third a chance to open up as well. Also battle for sixth, heating up between Braun and Barry, but watch this battle for fourth place. See if Castro can get a good draft on Gullickson going into turn number 1 and set him up for a pass. He's reeling him in really nicely. We've seen Castro make a couple of moves through there, but he's going to think better of it. About a car length gap between the two of them. He's going to go a higher line as we see this pass for James Barry going off through 130R. They were darn near side by side through that hard corner into the Casio triangle. Oh, little bit of a wiggle. That's never good, as one car does go off as well. I believe that's Gonzaga going off course as he's fallen back to 14th.
That, I believe, actually was Christopher Yanakis, who we saw go from one side of the screen to the other with a rather odd line heading off through Casio Triangle. Not sure if that is allowed by iRacing or Race Control. May get a penalty for that rather creative interpretation of track limits, but nevertheless, that was a big moment involving Barry. He's a fast driver. Haven't seen too much of him as of recent here in the officials. Won the championship back-to-back 2 and 3 seasons ago, and that wasn't his first official championship here in this series, as we see Rudolf Nagel with a very nice looking helmet. Must say, the driver of the number 11 car with a nice looking helmet, a nice looking car with a rather good sponsor on the back of that rear wing there as well. That plug was about as slick as 80 grit sandpaper, but still finds himself in a good spot, about 0.6 of a second between himself and Rafa Blanco. May hold on to that P2 result after all, as that pack a little bit farther towards the north end of the field has broken up a teeny tiny bit. I say that though, Gullickson, Castro side by side down into 130R. Castro gonna lick the stamp and send it to jump his way to fourth.
Yeah, it might be too little too late though for these two drivers to catch up to that bottom step of the podium. Battle right there as the leader, Lucas Rise. He has done almost everything right. He's got 18 more corners to go. Last lap, Castro has the fourth place position into turn number 1, but can Gullickson make some sort of move? We've seen the passes that Castro has made. It may be too little too late for Gullickson, but also watching Nagel doing his best to hold off Blanco for wherever they're going to stand on the podium provisionally. Anything can happen here through the S curves, and got to go through Dagner curve, but the big two questions, the hairpin and the spoon curve. Who will be up front? We know it's going to be Lucas Rise right now. He has not put a wheel wrong so far, Ron, as he's got half a track to go.
Well, I gotta say, honestly, Jeremy, you are a lot braver than I am. I'm not going to say anything about Lucas Reese on the count of the fact that I've pulled off some terrible commentator jinxes in my time, and I'm not going to do it to him in that number 6 car. He's heading his way off through the hairpin for the final time with a 3¼ second gap, a little bit more than that now between himself and Rudolf Nagel. He may have a battle on his hands with himself and Rafa Blanco. Blanco really turning up the wick in the final lap of this race. It's broken up a little bit between Castro and Gullickson. Now about a second between those two racers as it's closed up right in front of them for the battle of the last 2 podium positions. Nagel and Blanco, their nose to tail coming out of Spoon Curve. It's Reese on track for a victory, but I wonder if we're going to see a move heading off into the Casio Triangle. It's all move done onto 130R, 1 lap ago from Andre Castro to take P4. Not going to see it between these two racers, but Blanco going to have the run heading down into the final heavy braking zone of this race, and it doesn't look like he's going to be close enough to try and get that move done. But at the front of the field, Lucas Reese in the number 6 car going to go down that start-finish straightaway to grab the checkered flag. Lucas Reese is your winner of the Radical Esports Cup, round number 4 of this season at Suzuka, weaving like a madman, heading down that start-finish straightaway. It was Rudolf Nagel and Rafa Blanco running at your podium in P2 and P3, about 0.2 of a second between those two racers. Reese going to treat us to some donuts at the runoff area through turn number 1 and 2. A little bit of the gravel on the outside there because of some of the off-track moments, maybe helping his cause a little bit, but Lucas Reese in the 6 car gonna get his first official win of this season for these 2100 GMT broadcasted races. Well done.
And you know what's interesting too is we saw a lot of fast drivers involved in incidents, but Lucas Reese still had his nose to the grindstone, and from the word go, he took the lead and went for it. Lucas Reese, your winner, followed by Rudolf Nagel and Rafa Blanco. They round out your podium. The rest of the top 5 look like this. It's Andre Castro and Havar Gullickson. So great battle between them two. Kim Andre Bjorklund, Heinz Braun, 6th and 7th. 8th goes to Andreas Friedrich. Christopher Yanakis in 9th, and 10th, Kyle Larson.
And looking through the drivers that we have finishing right behind Larson, it continues on with Dennis Kyriakopoulos, Myron Ianni in P12, George Gonzaga going to finish in 13th, James Berry in 14th, Sebastian Lipp in P15, Lasse Sorensen in 16th in the number 16 car. He was not very happy with how things went for him here in this race. And Tom Katsadonis, a newcomer, I believe, to these SR10s, not going to be happy at all with the race that he had, being classed in last after starting from the pole. Lucas Reese, though, is your winner in the number 6 car, set the 5th lap of the race in the process as well. So some brilliant stuff from Lucas Reese, and just an overall brilliant race up and down the grid. As much as we didn't see a battle for the lead that we have seen in some previous rounds of this championship here for season 2 of 2025, it was still some pretty good racing going on throughout the field.
And that's no surprise, especially because this is probably one of the better spec series in real life to have this kind of racing. No matter who you race against, you're always going to have somebody who is going to be racing with you. And quite frankly, it's a great way to spend a Friday afternoon, evening, or Saturday morning, depending on where you are around the world.
And these races are always a hoot for these drivers. That's part of the reason why you see a consistent cast of characters showing up week in and week out here for the Radical Esports Cup. And speaking of week in and week out, you'll be able to catch all of the racing action from this season, along with all the other stuff here in the Radical world here on RaceSpot TV. In 1 week's time, the series is going to be rocking up to Mugello. Man, that start finish straight away, and that runoff into turn number 1. As much as we're looking forward to the runoff into turn number 1 here at Suzuka, Mugello in 1 week's time is going to be an absolute barn burner of a race as well, and hopefully all of you will be able to tune into the action there. And speaking of the action here from the Radicals on RaceSpot TV, you can tune into the Radical European Championship in the 3rd round of their season, coming to you from this exact same racetrack here on Sunday, April the 13th here on RaceSpot TV. Gives you a good reason to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on any of the racing action. But as for this broadcast tonight, for the 4th race of this 2025 Season 2 Radical Esports Cup season, I think that will just about do it. So for myself, Ron Mons, Jeremy Scott joining me in the commentary booth, and Ramiro Augustine Cineros doing a wonderful job working on the cameras and the graphics in the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for watching this presentation of the Radical Esports Cup here on RaceSpot TV, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not too distant future.